Dan Woods is the global head of intelligence at F5 Security. He has spent more than 20 years with local, state, and federal law enforcement and intelligence organizations. And today, right now, he is on the ground at Black Hat USA. This is one of the largest security conferences in the world. Dan, Black Hat is a place where everyone in cyber, from big companies that are defending crown jewels down to kind of ground level hackers, come and trade what they know. There's all sorts of presentations. There are new tricks and tips and uh, papers that are published. It is a really, really fascinating melting pot of everyone in security. So let's kind of start on the ground. What are some of the trends, especially when it comes to generative AI? What are some of the trends that are emerging at Black Hat this year?
Well, I've noticed when you walk Exhibit Hall, there are probably hundreds of signs that have reference to artificial intelligence or machine learning or generative AI or ChatGPT, any of those. It's kind of like blockchain was a few years ago. Everybody is rushing as quickly as they can to into the space, but I don't think anybody is going into it any faster than criminals are, frankly, and that raises a lot of concerns.
Yeah. I wonder, that's a great comparison of crypto and the hype around blockchain compared to the hype around artificial intelligence. AI at least seems a little more useful, at least in the cybersecurity world. Is this your take as well?
Yes, there is an awful lot of hype, but I think that I don't think there's going to be killer robots roaming the streets, but it is very scary what's possible now with AI, ChatGPT. It can really help criminals do much more damage, victimize more people, make a lot more money, and it concerns me greatly. And I don't think we have a solution to the problem yet, frankly.
How does AI give cyber criminals new tools, new skills?
Well, one example is I'm not a coder, but I occasionally will attempt to write a script to see if it's possible. Like I wrote a script that automatically creates accounts at Twitter. I wrote a script that really does a credential stuffing attack against the login application. I did this at the request of the enterprise. And the reason I do it, and I don't ask one of my professional programmers to help me, is because I want to prove how easy it is. If somebody like me, an unskilled programmer, could do it in a weekend by watching YouTube videos and reading, Stack Exchange, then anybody can do it. So it takes me a weekend to put together a script like this. But now with ChatGPT, it really only takes me less than an hour, because I ask ChatGPT to write the majority of the code, and then I go in and I make necessary changes. Now, it's not as simple as say, "Hey, ChatGPT, write me a credential stuffing tool," because if you ask it to do that, it will say no. It will because it says, "Look, I don't do anything criminal." But then if you instead say, write a tool that reads a username and password from a file one line at a time and tries that username and password against the login application at this enterprise, then it will write it. So it will write. You could trick the AI pretty easily into writing an attack tool. You just can't typically use the word attack. So that's one way. It's going to help people write malicious tools and write them much more quickly. Another way that it's going to really help, and this concerns me greatly, is in social engineering. Social engineering is already something that is really devastating to people all over the world. It's probably the most effective way of getting access to accounts, two-factor authentication, tricking people to download software onto the computer, tricking people into going to the drugstore to get gift cards to pay an IRS debt. Right now, a human could social engineer, I don't know, 50 to 60 people in a day, maybe more, maybe less, depending upon how long each call takes. But with AI, this person now can social engineer, well, unlimited numbers of people. And then think about phishing emails, Dan. What do we How are we trained to identify phishing emails? We're trained by saying, look for grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes, punctuation errors. ChatGPT does not make any of those errors.
Yeah.
So the quality of phishing emails is going to be greatly, greatly enhanced. And then with, deep fake technology, being able to replicate somebody's voice, imagine, getting a call from a loved one and it's their voice. And they're saying that they've been arrested and they need money wired, and I'm going to give the phone to this guy and please follow his instructions. Otherwise, I'm going to be in jail. All those schemes that have caused so much damage over the last decade now just received a boost in the.
One of these scams, it sounds like, if I understand you correctly, these are things that have been pre-existing, that have uh, security researchers have kind of, and the general public have really fend off these types of scams for a long time. This is just a brand new way of perpetrating schemes at large scale and being a lot more effective. So essentially, it is optimization and scalability. Is that a good way to understand this?
We have to remember that, and this is something where I think I'm an outlier for many of the other experts. I think criminals and attackers use the amount of sophistication necessary to launch a successful attack. Like a
Yeah.
common question is, are these credential stuffing attacks now being done using AI? And frankly, no, we're not seeing that. The tool may have been written, or at least part of it written using AI, but the actual attack, it just isn't necessary to deploy that level of sophistication. When we see attacks at F5, credential stuffing attacks, we mitigate them and we do battle with them. And rather than they then starting to use AI, we find that they're just moving on to softer targets. When everybody is protected by highly sophisticated countermeasures, that's when we'll likely see them transitioning to some AI attacks. But they're not going to throw unnecessary resources at an attack if the attack is already successful. They evolve just to the level of sophistication necessary to be successful. I use an analogy. When I was at CIA, there was people who specialized in lock defeat. Okay, that's what the person did. They went through years and years of training, and all they did was defeat locks. And they have all sorts of sophisticated tools, all sorts of sophisticated techniques. But what they do when they walk up to a lock is they first turn the doorknob and see if it is unlocked. And if it is unlocked, they don't deploy their sophisticated tools. And I think there's a comparison to be made with a lot of criminal organizations.
That's a great metaphor, and especially in this really heated period of time where artificial intelligence is a hype tool. At the same time, it's an incredibly important and useful tool. And yet, scenarios can run away with all sorts of sci fi creativity. And what you're saying is that, sure, that stuff exists, but criminals are really just going to use the path of least resistance, and they're going to go for the low hanging fruit. It's mixing metaphors there, but it is uh, really important to understand that.
Yes, absolutely. Now you're going to have researchers in a lab, using AI to launch various types of simulated attacks, and then they'll publish papers about how they used AI to launch the attack. That doesn't necessarily mean that criminals are going to do the same thing. I think you use the right phrase. They use the path of least resistance.
But we do hear a lot about kind of doomsday scenarios in cyber and in artificial intelligence. Are there scenarios that when you said that there is some cause for fear, or that you have some fear of what criminals are capable of doing, beyond these attacks, are there things that could get into that sophisticated realm, um, that might be a small possibility of happening, but if it does, this could be a disaster?
Yeah, I suppose if you look at SCADA systems, or nuclear control systems, water treatment facilities, these are targeted by state actors, and I suspect many of them have a foothold in some of these organizations already, and aren't doing anything because there needs to be some triggering event. And I suspect AI is going to help them be more successful, which does concern me quite a lot. I mean, that's a doomsday scenario, where maybe we have some kinetic conflict with another country that is also a nuclear power. Cyber attacks would be the first steps in that sort of an attack. They're not just going to launch nuclear missiles. There's going to be a lot of cyber attacks, I think, and AI could make those attacks more successful. So that is concerning.
Um, Tell me a little bit about dis and misinformation. In what ways can that blend with cyber?
Yeah, I had a huge concern for a long time. Once Elon Musk started expressing concern with acquiring Twitter and the discussion around fake accounts and Twitter insisting they're only 5%, I went ahead and created a fake Twitter account, and I wrote a script to create, more accounts. I bought 100,000 followers using fake accounts for less than $1,000 US. So there's a lot at social media companies and Twitter that can be exploited by state actors using not just fake accounts, but enhanced by AI. For example, the ecosystem that allows somebody to buy fake followers, that can be exploited by state actors to manipulate public opinion. Imagine what you could do if you had programmatic control over hundreds of thousands or millions of social media accounts. You could bury truths, you could amplify lies, you can manipulate public opinion, and in the U.S., where elections are won or lost by a few thousand votes, you can actually change the outcome of elections. So AI is going to be used by those actors, unfortunately, to make those sorts of campaigns much more successful. And I think social media companies need to get more serious about dealing with some of these bots and fake accounts. By the way, as a point of interest, my fake account that had 102,000 followers, all fake, that I just purchased, is now down to about 8 to 10,000 followers since Elon Musk took over. So he was able to find a lot of the fake accounts. The ones that he's missing now are the ones that I paid a little extra for, and they're not obviously fake. They are fake, but they look human, and he hasn't found those yet. So he still has some work to do.
What I'm kind of getting to is a contrast, and I wonder, your opinion matters quite a bit. I don't know that it is a binary, one or the other, but when we look at the potential existential challenges of cyber versus what is playing out with disinformation now, do you have a sense of which is more dangerous, these 9/11 existential fears of cyber war versus what is happening with disinformation?
Oh, I think the latter is more damaging because it isn't that's something that might happen. I believe it is happening already. So really, we're comparing the risk of something happening in the future that is really bad with not a risk, but the fact that it is happening today and causing significant damage. Look, I think that everyone wants to believe that they are an independent thinker, that they are a critical thinker, that they take all the evidence and evaluate it objectively and make well-informed decisions. Unfortunately, that's simply not true. All of us have a little bit of sheep in us, and we are influenced by the mob. All of us. Some of us perhaps more than others. And bad actors can exploit that vulnerability to accomplish to manipulate public opinion and change the outcome of elections. They absolutely can. I believe that's happening today. And really, we're not doing enough to stop it, I don't think.
Well, last question, Dan. Looking ahead at the upcoming general election in the United States, obviously elections happen all over the country and the world all the time, but the next big one will be here in the United States in a little over a year. What can we do to prepare for an information landscape that could be populated by the proliferation of disinformation?
That's a tough one, Dan, because really it would be about educating the public. And I've done everything I can to educate the public that they should, not only should they not trust product ratings, but they should trust really everything they read on the internet. They should question everything they read on the internet. But how do you convince millions and millions of people to do that? They are, like I said, they believe that they are already doing that, and it's really hard to convince them that they're not. I really think it's going to be necessary for some I think some regulation for social media companies, because right now there's a reverse incentive. They don't really care about bots. They impact their the daily active users and their valuation. So they're not too interested in really getting to the bottom of all the bots, but the government should make it a priority. I really believe that fake accounts, the ability to programmatically control a lot of accounts, is going to be targeted for the election. It probably already is, and social media companies need to do more to stop it.